So we finally got the final two big reveals for DBT07, Raging Flames against the Emerald Storm, but on top of that, we got the surprise reveals of the two new promos, which will be included in the new Dear Days physical copy, which are two new boss units for Keter Sanctuary and Dark State. Stand up! Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we've got some exciting new cards, two new triple rares, or should I say the last two triple rares for set 7 for OverDress, and on top of that we got the bonus reveal of two new boss units, which bring a very unique playstyle to Keter Sanctuary as well as to Dark States, which looks pretty interesting. Maybe a bit meta divining, maybe not, but at the very least a new playstyle for players to enjoy and potentially grab their attention with. But before we head into those cards, let's first take a look at the new triple R support units for Keter Sanctuary as well as Dragon Empire, as we got some new interesting new cards. And we start off with the new Keter Sanctuary support cards, which is this grade 2 Knight of Rendering Flash Keter. And Keter has the effect, although when the unit is placed on the Vanguard circle, cost, counter +1 and soul +1, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose a card from among them, reveal it, call to the Vanguard circle if it's a grade 2 or less unit card, and put it into your hand if it's not. Shuffle your deck. So this is essentially a top 3 searcher for either a unit you can call or grab a card to your hand. Now, basically, you either grab a rear guard or you get your Persona right card to your hand, or maybe a specific grade 3 if you need it, like maybe Bastion or something. But since this is grade 2, you probably not gonna play this in Bastion. This is very interesting for like something for Hexor, maybe Phantom Blast or Dragon or anything that can use a generic searcher, because this is essentially a searcher, a consistency tool, as it allows you to dig through your deck a bit faster for a specific grade 1, grade 2 or grade 3 card. So overall, on OverDress, this is just a generic consistency card. Now in Premium, this has a nice synergy with the Oracle Think Tank Susanoo support, because those cards work around getting revealed. And as soon as you are revealing with this card, and they're still in the deck when you reveal them, this does work with a card like Amaterasu. So you can reveal Amaterasu from the top 3, add it to your hand, and then use Amaterasu's effect to then get a critical +10 power to the Vanguard, and also bind the top card of your deck for the cost, of course, or the effect of Amaterasu, which opens up very interesting synergies also from the premium aspect of this card. So overall, a pretty solid card for OverDress, and maybe has some neat interactions in premium. Now another card that is very surprising in effect wise is Meteor Flare Dragon, the brand new grade 2 triple R for Dragon Empire. And this brings in the Resist Destroyers in OverDress, because this grade 2 has the effect, although when the unit is placed on the rearguard circle, until the end of the turn, all of your opponent's rearguards lose all of their continuous ability and cannot gain them. Then, cost, counter +1, choose one of your opponent's rearguards in the same column as this unit and retire it. So you might think to yourself, what's the point of the removal of continuous effects? Now, the thing that this interacts with is, of course, the resist effect. So think of Trickstar, which doesn't allow you to retire it. With this effect, you remove that protection, and now you can pop it with the other part of the effect. But this also has some other implications, because there are also effects that gives certain units the intercept ability, and that's usually tailored to continuous effect, like giving it to grade 3, for example. This removes those effects as well. And in Premium, this can like be the Honolly counter, because Honolly has a very annoying effect that potentially can remove some multi-attack potential of your turn, and you're usually gonna use like a retire effect to remove it from the board. With this type of effect, you can just shut off that effect and just pop another card that's probably a bit more threatening for you or has a higher priority to get removed, while also dealing with the Honolly at the same time. So overall, a very flexible effect that can shut down multiple cards at the same time. But then it also has an additional effect, which is continuous a rearguard circle during your turn. If your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater and they have no rear guards, this unit gets power +10k. So it's a 20k beater, works very nice with the overall general playstyle of Kagero or Dragon Empire in general. So honestly, a pretty decent card. I think it's just generic removal for OverDress that doesn't have too much implications. It's probably good Eugene support that also can now circumvent certain protection cards, resist cards, but in Premium, this could have some application because you can potentially deal with multiple cards at the same time for almost no cost. But now we get to the fun part. The 2 new promo boss units that are coming in the physical copy of Dear Days. And we're gonna start with the one for Keter Sanctuary, which looks very familiar to a playstyle of a different nation. As we have Sword Saint Dragon Graham Grace. And Graham Grace has the effects, continues a Vanguard circle. Your persona right also increase the power of your back row units. So that's instead of a plus 10k to the front, it's essentially a plus 10k to every single unit. So plus 20k to the columns. But then it also has the effect, act on Vanguard circle once a turn, cost Counter Blast 1 and Soul Blast 1, draw a card, choose a card from your hand and call to the back row center rearguard circle, and until the end of turn, that unit can attack from the back row and gets power plus 10k. So it's essentially a plus mechanic that also allows you to multi-attack, because yes, you draw a card and need to call a card, but if you already are dedicated to call a card there in the first place, you're not gonna miss a card from your hand, and essentially the draw is an additional card that you get access to. And on top of that, you generate an extra attack on top of the Counter Blast that also draws a card, or Soul Blast as well, which is really good value to be had. And the plus 10k to the unit means, regardless of what you're going to call there, it's going to hit a 13k base Vanguard. And during a Persona right turn, don't forget, it also gets the extra 10k power, which is really nice. But then it also has the effect, on a Vanguard circle, at the end of battle, your back row center rearguard attacked, put that unit into your soul and draw a card. So even more resources, and that also negates the Soul Blast cost of the first effect, which is really good. So also as a package, this is a engine that draws a lot of cards, put a lot of power onto the board, and also multi-attacks to boot. And the great thing about this is, even though it relies on Persona right to some extent, because of the additional drawing we're doing, thanks to the second effect as well as the third effect, there's a higher consistency of actually getting the Persona right cards you need, or potential cards that are searching for a Persona right. Because don't forget, we just got the grade 2 for Keter Sanctuary, which can manipulate the top 3 and potentially call card or grab a grade 3 to your hand, which can be the Persona right for this unit. And overall, this essentially feels like Bastion to extent, where you have big numbers on the board and multi-attack. But the great thing is about this card is that it doesn't rely on being on grade 3. So you can use the entire card pool to its full power and full potential, which makes Graham Grace a pretty interesting boss unit that could definitely come out of nowhere. But of course, this isn't the only one we have, because we also have the new Dark States boss unit. And in this case, that is Demonic Prison Dragon Emperor Fafnir. And art-wise, this looks like a mix between Amon and the Legion from Granblue that we got in the previous V-Clan collection. And overall, art-wise, looks pretty sick. But the skills are also pretty unique, as it has the effect Continuous. You may only have up to one Demonic Prison Dragon Emperor Fafnir in your deck. So it's a singular card. So most likely this is going to be your grade for your right deck, and that's about it. Weird that they did print this with the Persona right icon, because you can never achieve Persona right with this card. But that's not here nor there. It also has the other effects, which is Auto Vanguard Circle. At the beginning of your main phase, your opponent chooses one of the rearguards, retires it. So free pop, which is nice. And if you did not ride this turn, this unit gets power plus 10k and critical plus 1 until the end of turn. So this is basically to compensate for the not having Persona right per se. And this is to some extent better than Persona right in the fact that you aren't reliant on drawing a specific card from your deck. But it's weaker than Persona right in the fact that you do not draw a card and you only give one unit plus 10k. You do get the critical, but I don't think that's equivalent to 20k less on the overall board, as well as a card in hand. But overall, it gives Vanguard pressure, and keep that in mind, combine this with the Dark States Overtrigger passive ability, that could potentially be plus 20k and plus 2 critical every single subsequent turn, which is nothing to scoff at, because that means every Vanguard attack is most likely lethal. But beyond that, it also has the effect on Vanguard Circle. When your opponent's Vanguard is retired during your turn, cast put a card from your hand into the soul and draw a card. So this works very nice with its first effect, because you're going to pop something at the beginning of your main phase regardless, so then you can immediately use this effect to cycle a card. Now, the great thing about this is that it's not once per turn. So this could potentially be a nice engine if we have multiple cards that could retire effects that you could cycle through your deck very rapidly over and over. Now, because this is in Dark States, it's a bit harder to come by retire, but if we combine it with the premium side with Dark Irregulars does definitely have retire options. So this could be an interesting card for Dark Irregulars to just turbo through the soul on turn 3. Sadly, it's not like NOK where you can immediately have a major payoff, but it's something to consider, which could be very interesting. But then on top of that, it also has the effect on Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, at the end of battle, this unit attacked. If the sum of your grades of the Dark States cards in your soul is 13 or more, cause Counterblast 2, stand this unit, and this unit gets drive -1 until the end of turn. So a restanding Vanguard that could definitely benefit from its plus 10k in critical it gets, because it definitely will be active on both attacks, and of course triggers in the drive checks will get double value here. The only issue that I have with this is that the restriction itself isn't that hard to fulfill. 13 grade in Soul is pretty easy to fulfill because you have your right line, which is already 3 grades. It can put cards into the Soul. We have a lot of Soul charge capabilities in Dark States, and because of its second auto ability, you can easily put higher grades from your hand into the Soul, so you can fuel for this card, which is really good. But the issue that I have with this is that it's 2 Counterblast, which means it's easy to deny this ability, as it's pretty hard to have always 2 face-up Counterblast, especially if you might need to use Counterblast for other effects, which makes it pretty hard to compete with that. And the counter charge in Dark States is a bit tricky, because yes, they have Selfish Engraver, but Selfish Engraver is very specific in usage, and I don't know if Fafnir is able to use the Selfish Engraver for the counter charge capabilities, as we've seen in something like Baron Magnus, for example. And of course, yes, you can use the restand on your first grade 3 turn, so if you went first, your opponent's on grade 2, you can swing twice, but your Vanguard is just 13k. You don't have Persona Ride, you don't have the plus 10k buff of its own effect, because that's turn 4 and onwards, so you're reliant on your drive checks to make your Vanguard pretty threatening, or you need specific units that buff up your Vanguard so you can abuse the restand. And yes, those are available in Dark States, but it's a bit tricky to get full value here, because not only do you need those specific units, you also need to fulfill the 13 grade in Soul condition to even get here, and on top of that, you need to have the 2 Counterblast as well. So overall, a bit of a tricky situation here, but an interesting boss unit nonetheless. And because it's relatively generic in the sense how it works with the Dark States core engine, I can definitely see this being played and potentially get better in the future with specific support cards that could help either the retire aspect of this card, the soul charging capabilities of this card, or even potentially fixing the Counterblast 2 problems of this card. Overall, a very interesting card, and overall a very interesting card pool that we've seen today, and I cannot wait to see where Fafnir as well as Graham Grace can bring us in the future, what these decks can do, and how players are able to abuse these card abilities to their full capacity, because these are just boss units on their own. We have no dedicated support cards for them, but I think there is definitely a deck to be built with these 2 boss units. And on top of that, we also got the 2 specific new generic support cards for Dragon Empire as well as Keter Sanctuary from set 7, which definitely can work in multitude of deck builds and potentially future builds coming on the horizon. But with it said, that's basically everything that I want to talk about today. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. What you guys think about these new cards? Are you excited about the new or latest and the last support card for set 7? Or are you mainly focused about these new boss unit promo cards coming in dear days, as there's maybe some very nice spice to be built here? I'm very curious on what your thoughts are and potentially what your build options are with these new units. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely Patreons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or anything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!